Well, welcome everybody to today's Family Medicine Grand Rounds. We are partnered with the South Central AHEC, and our mission statement is shown there on the screen for you. Next slide. So you don't need to sign in for this meeting, being that we're on Zoom. I already know who's online here, so no worries there. But if you could please just make sure that you do mute your microphone as we go ahead and get started here. Also, if you have questions, I've been asked to have you put those in the chat box, and we'll address those at the end of the presentation. And then also I will be putting in the link for feedback towards the end if you can help us out with that. Next slide. So this is the Family Medicine Grand Rounds, April 5th. The activity code is not correct there. I just noticed. I will put it in the chat box here shortly. And I will update everybody on that. So that one probably won't work today. The date's right, but I got the code wrong on there. So disregard that. But if you are claiming credit, please make sure that you do before midnight tonight. On the next slide, that code is also wrong, so don't use that one. But if you have not yet registered, you'll need to send your email address to the toll-free number listed there. And if you are having any issues, please make sure that you reach out to me. But I think pretty much everybody that's joined here has already registered. So we'll go on to the next slide. And those who are claiming credit, please make sure to check your CME transcript regularly and make sure that those credits are showing up on your transcript so that you can use the credits however you need. You can do that by going to the CME website. And if you have any questions, their information is listed there, but you can also reach out to me. Next slide. Those who are members of the AAFP, also remember that you can claim credit through their system. Any issues, please contact them, or you can reach out to me as well. Next slide. It is our goal for these sessions to make sure that we address the nationally established physician core competencies that are shown here on the screen. Next slide. And we also want to mention that Dr. Avery has no financial relationships with ineligible companies to disclose. Next slide. Her topic for today is physician well-being. It's not just me.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Today, I'm going to talk about a topic which is very important to all of us. I kind of changed the title to, instead of Physician Wellbeing 101, it's Physician Wellbeing, It's Not Just Me. It's the approach why it's changed that way. So to begin with, these are the objectives for the topic today. Define burnout and well-being, identify the factors that cause burnout, describe and differentiate the three eras of physician well-being at the physician and organizational levels. Fourth, describe the different approaches to address physician well-being, and then illustrate the different strategies to address physician well-being at the systems and personal level. So what do we know of physician well-being? There are several models of physician well-being. I particularly like this one as it encompasses a more holistic view. So it involves emotional, which is coping effectively with life and creating satisfying relationships; environmental, good health by occupying pleasant, stimulating environments that support well-being; financial is included in there, which is satisfaction with current and future financial situations. Intellectual well-being is also there, recognizing creative abilities and finding ways to expand knowledge and skills. Occupational, this means personal satisfaction and enrichment from one's work. Physical, which involves recognizing the need for physical activity, healthy foods, being able to sleep well. Social, this is very important to us as physicians, developing a sense of connection, belonging, and being in a well-developed support system. And lastly, the spiritual, This is expanding a sense of purpose and meaning in life. So what do we know about burnout? These are challenging times for physicians. Extensive changes in the practice environment have altered the nature of physicians' interactions with patients and their role in the healthcare delivery system. Many physicians feel as if they are cogs in the wheel of austere corporations and care more about productivity and finances than compassion or quality. They often do not see how the strategy and plan of their organization align with the values of their profession. And despite their expertise, they frequently do not feel they have a voice or input in their operational plan of their work and department or organization. So physical burnout is physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion caused by long-term involvement in emotionally demanding situations. So this slide kind of tells us, moving from well-being into burnout, whereas in the well-being side, there's energy, there's motivation, there's compassion, and people are hopeful, there's accomplishment. While in the burnout field, we have meaning physicians who are emotionally fatigued, disengaged, there's callousness, cynicism, and there's poor performance. In physicians, it's particularly important to look at how it happens. There's a role overload, expectations of others exceeding one's ability to perform. There's also role conflict. Physicians are often forced to make a choice about which demand to satisfy. An example is a child soccer game versus staying late to see patients or complete paperwork. As you know, we have a lot of baskets to complete, right? So this is Maslach 6 drivers of burnout. This has been in there since the 80s, and yet it is still very much applicable to today, and it even has worsened when during the time of COVID. So there's work overload, there's lack of control, which is important to physicians. There's insufficient rewards or lack of professional recognition when it's difficult to get promoted, or lack of knowledge on how to get promoted. There's breakdown of community. We like to be around other doctors and nurses, and there's disconnectedness as well. So there's a sense of unfairness. This is like saying, this is not what I signed up for, so, and the changing demographic of the healthcare workforce, with so many clinicians not being judged on the quality of their work and what they bring to the workplace, but on the color of their skin, gender and gender orientation, and all those things. There's also conflicting values. So there's been a lot of evidence of this. This chart this graph talks about the comparison of medical student, resident, fellow, and early career physician respondents to a survey about burnout and distress with probability age matched samples of US college graduates. This slide also shows burnout and satisfaction with work-life balance among US physicians relative to the general population. As you can see, it is right there in the middle. This slide also shows the mean satisfaction is on the lower end. So there is poor self-care by clinicians, and this is time and again evidenced by what I see and what you probably see in your clinics and your colleagues in the workplace. There's less doctor visits for themselves. I am guilty of this. Some doctors do not see a physician themselves and will self-prescribe drugs. There's also perceived stigma around seeking help or support, and willing to work when sick and expect the same from colleagues, but not patients. There's also denial and avoidance, physician coping strategies. There's poor record of mutual support and positive feedback in the field. There's protecting the privacy of colleagues. There's doctors are self-reliant, individual-driven, and achievers who are industrious and self-sacrificing. And so it's like if I don't perform, then I'm weak. So the cost of burnout, there will be an effect on patient care and safety. There's decrease or poor patient medication adherence. Physicians recommend evidence-based screening and health counseling are reduced when physicians have poor personal health. So there's also reduced workplace productivity and efficiency. And there's a cost of replacing a physician, which is quite high. I think this is a low number here. There are different calculators that you can check online. One is in the steps forward by the AMA, and you can calculate there the cost of replacing a physician or the cost of burnout. So burnout in healthcare, with the definition with 3 dimensions: emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and feeling of low personal accomplishment. And there's a lot of contributing factors to this. There are professional isolation, working with a difficult population, especially if you are working with patients who are underprivileged, long hours with limited resources, ambiguous success, unreciprocated grieving, failure to live up to one's own expectations, and personality variables. So let's go to, this is a review of the 3 areas of physician well-being. This is from an article that differentiated the 3 areas of addressing well-being. So the first is the era of distress. This was before 2005. So it's divided into the physician characteristics and organizational characteristics. So under physician characteristics, this is way in the past, where physicians are deity-like qualities, superhuman. Medical school and residency training were characterized as rites of passage mindset. So there's perfection, there's no limit on work. Self-care is, you just need to do healthy exercise, stress reduction, getting enough sleep, when not on duty, isolation. And burnout is perceived as a weakness of the worker and not the system. The organizational characteristics comprise of lack of awareness. There's focus on institutional needs, rigid environment. They ignore distress. There's unfettered autonomy. There's neglect, ignorance of economic impact, and physicians and administrators function independently. Now let's move to, when well-being is being recognized, and this is between 2005 and 2010, and still continues to be to the present day. So the physician still has the characteristics of being hero-like qualities, but now there's recognition of wellness. There's now recognition, or there's talk of work-life balance. And also the focus is on resilience, focus on individual level solutions centered on providing treatment for physicians in distress. There's mental health resources, peer support, as well as cultivating personal resilience through intervention like mindfulness-based stress reduction. There's connections, but still there still continues to be frustration as the strategies are not very effective. The organizational characteristics has improved to more awareness. There's now focus on patient needs still. There's choice, there's team, there's treating the distress, but it's still more of a carrots and sticks type of situation. And the blame is still on individual or individual clinicians and not the system. And there is adversarial relationship between the physicians and administrators. Now, going to the well-being 2.0, and this has started in 2017, where there are, well, still a few, but there's more and more institutions embracing this form of physician well-being. There's on the physician characteristics, there's more of recognition of the human qualities of a physician. There's acceptance that physicians are subject to the same human limitations that affect all human beings, with attention to appropriate staffing, breaks, and rest. Now there's recognition of vulnerability and growth mindset. There's, instead of work-life balance, it's more of work-life integration. There's promotion of self-compassion. There is recognition of the meaning and purpose of why we are here. And then there's a stronger sense of community. So there's support for colleagues, and also there is a form, there's now more recognition and push to care for each other. Now, in the organizational side, there's more action. There's focus on the needs of people. There's more flexibility instead of being rigid. Now the focus is on the system and not the personal, not the individual. And there is also recognition to prevent distress and cultivate professional fulfillment. There's aligned autonomy, there's shared responsibility, there's value on investment, and the physician and administrators are now collaborators and less adversarial. So addressing physician well-being requires a coordinated systems approach as opposed to focusing on the individual. It is important to think about physician well-being at this level. Burnout is a manifestation in the individual of the dysfunction of the workplace, not a lack of personal resilience, as the doctors are the most resilient people in the world. The problem is the workplace itself, and has become the workplace itself has become so challenging to work in that the job is almost undoable. We need to be measuring, tracking, addressing well-being at the same level of commitment that we look at our operational goals, our quality goals, and our excellence in care. We need to look at well-being in a framework that involves three components. First, the practice efficiency, a culture of well-being, and personal well-being. So the first is the practice efficiency, or practice support. The idea here is to design a practice environment where we are really focusing on what systems and tools we need to be better optimized to allow people to spend more of their time on meaningful and purpose-driven work. So what physicians really want to do. Creating a workplace environment which is responsive to the needs of the providers and healthcare workers. Focus on optimization of workflows, systems, and tools to decrease administrative burden, leveraging the team, ensuring that providers can focus on work which is meaningful and purpose-driven. And I know doctors, and me included, I like to see patients, and I can do that and be happy with that. But addressing the basket, that's where we are having challenges with. We are all familiar with the triple aim. Burnout among the healthcare workforce threatens a patient-centered, threatens patient-centeredness and the triple aim. Dissatisfied physicians and nurses are associated with lower patient satisfaction, and physician and care team burnout may contribute to overuse of resources and thereby increase costs of care. Unhappy physicians are more likely to leave their practice, and the cost of physician turnover approaches more than $250,000 per physician. Dissatisfied physicians are more likely to prescribe inappropriate medications, which can result in expensive complications as well. So there is now a move towards the quadruple aim, which includes the health of the healthcare team. And so these are the strategies that may be employed to address the quadruple aim. So these are examples and may or may not be applicable to your organization. This mostly includes the clinical operations. So implementing team documentation is one. Use pre-visit planning and pre-appointment lab testing instead of like doing the lab test, ordering the lab test, and then calling the patient again afterwards. So which doubles the work. Expanding the roles of nurses and other members of the team. So involving them in the preventive, chronic, physician written standing orders to perform tasks for the team. Standardize and synchronize workflows for prescription refills. Co-locate teams so that physicians work in the same space as their team members. Avoid shifting burnout from physicians to practice staff. So it cannot be like, oh, now we're putting the work not on the physicians, but on the staff, which then which will not be effective because they're part of the team as well. So we need to train them and then help them perform their responsibilities. There's also more financial and personal resources that can be dedicated to the primary care team. This may not be applicable to our setting. Consider population health, obesity, diabetes, patient-centeredness, and the fourth aim, which is a disengaged workforce. So there are resources that we can use that are available. These are tools that we can use to analyze our workflows and processes and improve on them. So there's the PDSA, or the Plan, Do, Study, Act, the SMART goals, root cause analysis, spaghetti diagram, to name a few. So this is a screenshot of the AMA Steps Forward, where there's a lot of physician resources that we can use. So it gives us a collection of tools that are practical and usable in our clinics. There are best practices examples as well that we can learn and emulate in our workspaces to make our environments work for us, thus helping us be well and perform better. So the second and the component is culture. Looking at culture intentionally is important. What are the ingredients of a culture that supports this concept of connecting to joy and meaning? Everything from leadership development. How are we picking our leaders? How are we developing their skills to lead in a collaborative environment? How are we offering a broader spectrum of professional development opportunities for our physicians across their career arc? Culture is simply the way a group thinks, acts, and interacts. It is composed of the behaviors, beliefs, values, and symbols the group accepts, often without thinking about them. They are passed along by communication and imitation from person to person over time. There are key points to think of. Building a deliberate practice culture starts by asking the simple question: how do we want to be together? A practice culture that focuses on service, teamwork, attitude, reflection, renewal, and self-care will help its members thrive. And to change the culture of our practice, we must intentionally do something different than what we are doing right now. So this was written by Dr. Mark Greenwald. And he also said, if you do not know how your culture developed, then you probably have a culture by default. That doesn't mean it's an unhealthy culture. It simply means that when things aren't going well, your practice has no standard to help you recalibrate and no target toward which you are moving. So these are also other resources to help cultivate a culture of well-being. So these are the 10 steps to to cultivate strong team culture in your practice. This is from the AMA Steps Forward module on team culture. It teaches to diagnose the current state of your team culture, discuss the results and brainstorm possible improvements, create a team compact, create opportunities for team communication throughout the day, meet regularly as in huddles, strengthen the team by focusing on individual development, get to know your team members, teach leaders to be mentors and not managers, create an environment that supports continual learning, engage patients. As you can tell, there is increasing communication, in also focusing on individual development and improvement, and also continual learning. These are things that are already existing in our clinics. This is also another resources. Executive leadership and physician well-being. These are 9 organizational strategies to promote engagement and reduce burnout. This is from the Mayo Clinic. To them, acknowledge and assess the problem, which is again what was from the AMA. Harness the power of leadership. Again, providing tools for our leadership. Develop and implement targeted work unit interventions. Cultivate community at work. Use rewards and incentives wisely. Align values and strengthen culture. Promote flexibility and work-life integration. Provide resources to promote resilience and self-care, and facilitate and fund organizational science. So focusing on our leaders, leadership requires a broad set of skills, and some leadership styles may work better in some situations than others. Thankfully, the skills that physician leaders must master to effectively promote the engagement and professional fulfillment of physicians and other highly trained professionals are a limited set that are not predicated on charisma or certain personality. Some of the key skills and qualities of a wellness-centered leadership include inclusion, keeping people informed, humble inquiry, developing individuals, empowering individuals and teams, and focusing on intrinsic motivators rather than extrinsic rewards or punishment. These skills can be learned, strengthened, and developed. The most essential element is empowering relational leadership that produces outcomes consistent with the altruistic values of the profession. This involves identifying and enabling implementation of improvements that advance the ability of physicians to provide high-quality, compassionate care to patients in an equitable and just practice environment. So one model is the wellness-centered leadership model. This is inclusive of the core skills and qualities along with evidence on the relationship between leadership and physician well-being, and distills them into a single framework designed to cultivate leadership behaviors that promote engagement and professional fulfillment. There are 3 elements, and that's care about people always, cultivate individual and team relationships, and inspire change. Each element is broken down into mindset, behaviors, and outcomes. Now, leadership also plays an important role in setting the tone for the culture of the practice. Successful team cultures promote leadership that emphasize teaching and mentoring over traditional management structures. Physicians and advanced practice providers use leadership and coaching daily through communication with and teaching patients. So strive to use this in our interactions as well. These are, there are others who lead in your team. These are not just physicians. There are administrators, nurses, practice managers who should be recognized and fostered in their leadership roles as well. At the UT Health Primary Care Center, Dr. Cancino and Dr. Bruce Rudy are conducting a series of trainings called Learning in the Flow of Work for our leadership team, which are the medical directors, practice managers, and supervisors. Here is a screenshot of when we have our leadership training, which occurs every 2 weeks. So these are things that we are learning. We are learning about listening loudly, which is important. It's an important skill in effective leaders. Learning how to provide feedback, paraphrasing, clarifying, empathic listening, active listening. We are also learning about building a cohesive team culture. We're learning about powerful direction, sturdy structure, caring environment, shared approach. Does everyone on the team have a common understanding of what it means to be in our team? So these are examples of focusing in our leaders, giving tools to our leaders to build a culture of well-being. So the third component is personal well-being, taking care of oneself. We should be thinking about taking care of ourselves and improve on how we do things, whether as a doctor, as a mother, a father, or a friend. What are the things I am more effective in if I take care of myself? How can taking care of myself improve all of the other things that I do? This is absolutely not a sign of weakness, but an optimal means of caring for others. At this point, I would like to show you a video, and I'm going to be asking Nicole to help me out. I'm going to stop sharing.
All right, are you ready for me to play it?
Yes.
There's a well-known story about a university professor who wanted to make a point about how we make the most of our time. The professor stood before his class with some items in front of him. When the class began, without speaking, he picked up a large empty jar and proceeded to fill it with rocks about 2 inches in diameter. He then asked the students if the jar was full. They agreed that it was full. So the professor then picked up a box of pebbles and poured them into the jar. He shook the jar lightly and watched as the pebbles rolled into the open areas between the rocks. The professor then asked the students again if the jar was full. They chuckled and agreed that it was indeed full this time. The professor picked up a box of sand and poured it into the jar. The sand filled the remaining open areas of the jar. Now, said the professor, I want you to recognize that this jar signifies your life. The rocks are the truly important things, such as family, health, and relationships. If all else was lost and only the rocks remained, your life would still be meaningful. The pebbles are the other things that matter in your life, such as work or school. The sand signifies the remaining small stuff and material possessions. If you were to put sand into the jar first, there is no room for the rocks or the pebbles. The same can be applied to your lives. If you spend all your time and energy on the small stuff, you will never have room for the things that are truly important. Pay attention to the things in life that are critical to your happiness and well-being. Take time to look after your health, play with your children, go for a run, write a letter to your grandmother. There will always be time to go to work, clean the house, or watch TV. Take care of the rocks first. The things that really matter, set your priorities. The rest is just pebbles and sand.
Thank you, Nicole.
Okay.
So I'm going to share my screen again. Thank you. So it's about prioritizing what is important and thinking what is important. So there are 5 guiding principles in taking care of ourselves. First, say no to perfection. Good is good, great is great, but perfect is unnatural and destructive. As physicians, we can struggle with this because we want to be competent and do everything well. We need to remind ourselves that we can do anything, but not everything. Second, say yes to team. We must not only ask for help, but also accept help when offered from our team members, nurses, medical assistants, other providers, students, residents, and even our IT staff. This requires letting go of control, allowing others to thrive and learning to appreciate help and not resist it. 3, embrace emotions. We as humans are designed to experience a full spectrum of feelings. We need to give ourselves permission to be vulnerable and to feel fatigue, sadness, frustration, disappointment, grief, and even joy. Our emotions do not make us weak. They make us authentic and powerful. 4th, measure wellness. If we claim to measure what matters, we must add well-being to our organizational and individual performance dashboards. Our wellness is critical to our effectiveness, not only as physicians, but also as teachers, researchers, spouses, parents, etc. And 5th, celebrate self-care. Instead of shaming ourselves or our colleagues for self-care, we should affirm it. Caring for ourselves is not a sign of selfishness, lack of commitment, weakness, or laziness, but a means of maximizing our ability to care for others. We need to think of caring for ourselves as a project. The same care and meticulousness that we give to our work, performance, and department projects, we should also give that to ourselves. There are 2 tools that we can use, and that's the SWOT or SOWT and the PHIP or PHIP. So the self-SWOT. So how many of you have been in strategic plan meetings? I bet a lot of you. We have been to departmental SWOT meetings, so most of you are familiar with this. The first time I learned about SWOT was during our PCC leadership meeting, where all medical directors and practice managers were talking about the PCC and our initiatives. Since then, I have used this multiple times, but never for myself until I attended a training on leading physician well-being program. SWOT stands for strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. Think about yourself as an improvement project. So my strength, things related to wellness that I have mastered or do very well, like time management, which is not mine. My weakness, things related to wellness that I don't do well, regular exercise, that's an example. My opportunities, things that could positively affect my wellness if I pursue them. So like social groups, other things, vacation. My threats, things that could negatively affect my wellness if I don't attend to them, like a sick family member. So these are examples. The other one would be the personal health improvement plan. So analyze your self-SWOT and pick one aspect you want to focus on for self-improvement. Make your choice consistent with your vision statement. For example, using the above vision statement, you may choose to focus on things that would increase your energy, such as physical exercise, healthier eating, social connections, or better time management. Once you have selected an aspect to focus on, complete your personal health improvement plan worksheet or use the online version to get daily reminders. There are already resources and tools that you can use that are readily available to you. The worksheet leads you through setting a wellness goal, identifying factors that may threaten your progress, and identifying metrics and steps that you will take. Ideally, you will start your wellness plan today or pick a date and continue for at least 30 days. Focusing on one change at a time increases your likelihood of success rather than doing it all together. When you're ready to focus on another aspect of well-being, then you can use the SWOT and the PHIP tools again. And as well as improvement processes, there will be steps forward, backward, and even sideways. Expecting perfection will lead to disappointment. So the goal should not be to become superhuman, but to continuously improve. So this was a Mayo Clinic study confirmed this. Physicians who spend 20% of their time on an activity felt to be meaningful, whether that is clinical work, community service, or research were least likely to experience burnout. Career fit by activity viewed most personally meaningful. The y-axis shows the percentage of individuals who spend at least 20% of their effort in an activity viewed as most meaningful, based on whether patient care, education, research, or administration is viewed as the most meaningful activity in the y-axis. The results indicate that a smaller percentage of those who view education as the most meaningful aspect of their work spend at least 20% of their time in the activity that they view most meaningful. When we are caring for ourselves and sustaining our own health, we have the ability to do better at what we do. And certainly we can observe that our systems are not working for us, but that is not an excuse, but a call to act. This is going to be my last slide. I would like to go over this one by one. So 10 commandments of physician well-being. First, thou shalt not expect someone else to reduce your stress. 2, thou shalt not resist change. Thou shalt not take thyself in vain. Remember what is holy to thee. Honor thy limits. Thou shalt not work alone. Thou shalt not kill or take it out on others. Thou shalt not work harder. Thou shalt work smarter. Seek to find joy and mastery in thy work. And lastly, thou shalt continue to learn. That will end my presentation for today, and I thank you for your attention. I am now open to questions at this time. These are also my references, which will be available to you as well.
Dr. Avery, there was one question in the chat. It says,
Yes.
have you or your group implemented the get rid of stupid stuff strategies?
I have learned about the get rid of stupid stuff strategy. It is, we have one of my projects. So when I did the leading physician well-being program, we were made to do a system-wide project and a personal improvement project. And so for the system-wide, that's one of the things that I had wanted to improve in the Verde Hills. I wanted to improve our slot utilization rates, but at the same time, not burning out our clinician, and also improve the way we do our messaging and to decrease the amount of calling and messages from patients. And so we did template management, making sure that our slots are utilized, but yet limiting our slots so that our physicians are not seeing so many patients for that day. So it's limiting the amount of patients that they see, and yet allowing them to be able to see their patients and perform, you know, because we live in an organization, so there are still performance metrics. And also we did, one of the things that we do are that when we are ordering labs, we order it prior to the clinic visit so that patients are able to do it before, and during the clinic visit, then we discussed it with patients. Because if we order it during our clinic visits, then we have to call our patients again. So then it adds another work, right? So it's doubling the work. Other things that we did is we, all of our refills, for refills that are chronic, like medications that are long-term, they are refilled for a year. And also our patients leave, when our patients leave the clinic, they already have an appointment for the next visit. It's like they cannot leave without an appointment. So what happens is that there's less calls to our clinic for asking for slots or asking for follow-up appointments. So they are already, before they leave, the appointments already there. Those simple changes have, we could tell that there were improvements on how many messages that are incoming to our clinic. So those are little things that it's not major, or these are just little workflow things that we had changed, and that has already provided impact. And of course, that's not just that, it's like continually trying to improve. We could improve on our templates, or we could improve on how long how long we are focusing on writing our notes. One of the focus for Dr. Cancino, which is included in the PCC strategic plan, is to decrease pajama time. So those are, we're looking at that as well. And maybe the doctor who asked the question can share how they try to do, how they try to get rid of their small stuff.
Dr. Avery, this is Yun. I was the one
Yes.
asking the question. Nothing has been done yet, but I think should be a systemic effort in reducing documentation burden and inbox burden.
Yes, for sure that it's, and one of the things that I've learned, like when we're trying to address this, and if we're doing it in our own clinics, like for you, like if you do something at the FHC, make sure that you measure, because one of the things that should come out is that something that we can talk and report. So measure before and after, whether it's the number of messages, or if you are maybe measuring the physician well-being themselves, or like their attitudes, or anything, but measure before and then do it like a small PDSA, so that it is something then that can be improved on, shared, and then it becomes larger. So because if it's something like an effort that you do, and yet you do it on the side, it doesn't, like it's not, when it's not reported or not shared, then it's not as effective. So that's my recommendation.
Hey, Dr. Avery, this is Yun again. Sorry, I take it back. From my perspective, I haven't tried anything from as a personal effort, but the clinic is doing a lot of delegation in terms of messaging. So there are a lot of supporting staff are going through the messages. So when it comes to the physicians, it's already filtered. I was incorrect when I answered it.
Okay. Thank you. And one of the things too is like, and it is also good, like if we are trying to do or develop a system-wide project to improve your workflows in the clinic, make it simple, not be as difficult, so make it simple. Maybe like for the huddles, incorporating a gratitude board. That's it, like then you can do measure before and after, things like that. So make it simple, but measure. That would be the best way to do it, so that you can share something, and then that something can be shared to other clinics as well. Yes, Dr. Nadeau.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for the talk. I did want to make just one comment about the approach. One of the approaches you talked about with SWOT. If for any residents that haven't had any specific personal experience with strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, that's a methodology we're using for program, improvement. I have less experience with it in terms of using it on a personal level, but in that setting, it's really very helpful way to think about action, coming up with action items that are specifically measurable by sort of thinking about your organization that way. So that's came out of the business community. has been around for decades, been used, say, in the last 20 to 25 years, even, more frequently in the medical field. So just a comment on SWOT.
Yes. Yes, like I said, I didn't know about this. I knew about this when we did it in our leadership meeting. But for the first time, I learned that it can be used for the self, like a SWOT, a self SWOT as well.
Dr. Avery, this is Dr. Hepburn. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Doctor.
Hey, good, excellent presentation. Really appreciate all your comments. Just an aside, and maybe more for the faculty members, and a number of the faculty have already taken part of this course at the School of Medicine, the clinical safety and effectiveness course that Dr. Patterson leads. And a lot of those tools, like the SWOT, are taught by Dr. Patterson and her colleagues. And the other one that's very important too is team steps, to build that team ethos and camaraderie that is so important. And a quick parting comment, and Dr. Nato can follow up in more depth too, but it's so important, and we call it in the Air Force a wingman concept, to have a peer that you can confide in and work through. In addition to your own personal journey, it's very, very helpful, no matter where you are in your professional stage of your career. Those are my thoughts. Thank you. Excellent presentation.
Thank you. And I think and maybe Dr. Nato can also comment on this. I've read about it, in one article. It's about the battle buddy, which is used in the military, and which there is an article about forming connection, there was one clinician who did a study where in the clinic, you identify one clinician like yourself, and there will be targeted actions. Like at the end of the day, you should have a talk, maybe 1 to 2 minutes, just to check on each other. You ask certain question and you have to answer that certain question, and then you do it every day. And so they're kind of trying to emulate the battle buddy from the military. What do you think, Dr. Nato?
Well, I was Air Force, so the wingman concept is more an Air Force type of thing, as opposed to, I think the battle buddy might be an Army thing. So I definitely can't comment on that. But the idea of both of those metaphors is, that you have somebody there watching out for you, right? With your wingman, that's somebody you're flying in some sort of formation with, who's actually watching your flank or some aspect of where you are in space to help protect you. So that's the metaphor.
Yeah, and the Navy calls it shipmate. So every service has their own equivalent of that. So
we're going to stick with the Air Force metaphor for the purposes of the
anyway, it's having a colleague that you can confide in, and you can certainly do it in a structured way, like you said, Richel, Dr. Averill, but also informally too, is so helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, well, I have put the link, if everybody could help us out and provide some feedback for Dr. Avery today, but thank you, Dr. Avery, for presenting, and thank you everybody for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.